am not going to lie to you. I do believe that the Greatsword needs a real huge buff to be competitive against the other weapons, because in some instances the highest combos that we're going to be able to pull off with this weapon that take quite a lot of setup and that require for you to know the monster quite a bit so that you can manage the true charge slash and the offset attacks, things like that. More often than not, a properly built character with a whole bunch of damage is going to require lots of positioning to reach 1.5k damage in your combo. Whereas, things like, for example, the dual blades or the insect glaive, they are going to be dealing up to 3k damage with less positioning and in less amounts of time. So, still, the satisfying thing about the Greatsword right now is that, well, always, is that men see big numbers, men happy. Like, huge numbers, men happy. And that is what you're going to have with this weapon. Usually you're going to sometimes see 1k damage and you're going to be very, very happy with it. And then just huge damage hits. What we're going to be focusing our character in here is more often not being able to deal a whole bunch of damage. This is not going to be an elemental build. That being said, we'll go, like always, into the equipment and then the weapons recommendations, then the decorations, and then finally I am going to have a hunt for you. Although, spoiler alert, like I mentioned, this is not going to be like 5 minutes or 7 minutes like the previous weapons that I've shown you, because this is a weapon that it takes quite a bit of more time to kill things, but it's very satisfying to use. It's very powerful, and nevertheless, it's just that compared to other weapons, I do think that this needs a buff. So, we're going to start with the gear. What we're going to be trying to achieve in here is to try to get as much offensive stuff as possible. That is, weakness, exploit, and agitator, and some points into flayer. Talk about that in a little while, but we're going to have for the head, we're going to have the hat shard helm. This is going to be the alpha version. Weakness, exploit, agitator, level 1. And then the Arc Vulcan male, Veta. This is going to have weakness, exploit, and 2 level slots, 3 and level 2 slots. The G Arc Velva races is going to have weakness, exploit, and 3 level 1 slots. And then finally, for the waist, we are going to have the G Arc Veld Coil, and this is going to give us 2 levels into Flayer. Now remember that if you're going to be playing with friends, it's very useful for you to have Flayer, at least 2 levels into Flayer, and if they're not using the weak spots, the wounds on the enemies, like for example, sword and shields don't need the wounds from the enemies to do anything. There's many weapons that actually do need the wounds to charge stuff. Just be sure that everyone is using them appropriately, because remember that the wound destroying with the Greatsword is going to give you access to an instant TCS, a instant true charge slash. So it is very much in your interest to have at very least 2 levels into Flayer so that you can have a little bit more wounds, so that you can have more true charge slashes. Now, weapon recommendations that I have for you right here. My advice is that you always use something that it is going to give you status ailment. Elemental greatswords are not going to be that amazing, and as a matter of fact, you should be focusing yourself a little bit more to raw damage. But there are some status ailments that are going to be amazing, like for example, this is very much a slightly worse version than the weapon that I have. I'm going to show you in a little while why is this going to be so very powerful. My weapon is actually kind of crappy, like really crappy, my Artian Weapon, and it's still better than the Master Weapon, which is already on itself by its own accord a very good weapon, because what you want to be doing is that you want to be sleeping the monsters, and while the monsters are asleep, you're going to be able to charge a full true charge slash that it has more damage on the final hit, because every time that you wake up an enemy with the charge slash or with any kind of attack, it deals more damage. I believe that it doubles the damage. This one has offensive guard, which is going to be very, very good. This is going to be lots and lots of DPS. As a matter of fact, that is one of the most important things that you want to be using with the Greatsword, the offensive guard, to deal that much more damage. It has lots of sharpness, although this is a weapon that is not going to use that much sharpness because you want to be doing more controlled attacks. So that's kind of a bummer, but it is a very, very good weapon. Now, on the other hand, this is by all means something that you can be using throughout the rendition of all of the high rank, so you can get the main blade 2 and then upgraded that later on to the rarity 7 and then upgraded on later on to the rarity 8. So this is my advice for a weapon that you should be using. However, there's another very good one, and like always, the Artian weapons are always like my favorites. They always have amazing stuff for any type of weapon that you're using. You will see in here that this has a huge amount of damage, it has a huge amount of poison, it has decent affinity, and it has just the right amount of wild sharpness that we need. But not only that, it also has the critical status, meaning that it is going to be making the poison to be that much more often to be on that. It also has the poison duration up. In here you can slot very well some focus and some critical boost as well. So yeah. Another very good option is, well, I did mention that I don't like that much elemental weapons with the Greatsword, but you do have in here the Rattleless Fire Sword, which is amazing because it already natively has critical boost. Its damage is not that amazing, but it has a huge, and I mean like a huge amounts of fire elemental damage. Why do I not like elemental damage with this weapon? Because an elemental build is not going to be viable. For an elemental build to be viable, you want to be using the builds that I have been showcasing, the Coalescence and the Burst and the things like that. This is a weapon that is not going to be attacking that fast. So, like I mentioned, a little bit more controlled attacks. So you're not going to have access to the Coalescence, and if you frenzy your character, it's going to take millions of time for you to remove the frenzy, meaning that you're going to be taking double damage. So in here with the build that I'm going to show you right now, you want to have raw damage. So what Artian weapons should I be forging? Everything that is not this crap that I have in here. I was unlucky enough to get one of the crappiest weapons, and even though being one of the crappiest weapons, it still is better than the Nersula tree, as you were able to see. Why is it so crappy? Well, we are building our Affinity with so much stuff that I'll show you in a little while when it comes to the Decos, so you don't really need that much of Affinity, and also you don't need that much of a elemental boost, because the sleep is just going to be a consequential little something that we're going to have in there. We're not using that. So what is it that you want to be building? Plain and simple, as much attack as you can. When you build your sleep weapon, either paralysis, sleep, or poison, any of them are just going to give you extra little things that are going to be very beneficial in your hunts. My advice is that you build for sleep, because you're going to, at the very least, be able to sleep the target twice. That means that you have 2 guaranteed true charge TCSs that are going to have double damage. So very, very useful. And then if you do paralysis, that's a little bit more time that you have to deal damage. But in here, you want to build as much raw attack as possible. Get 1 sharpness boost when it comes to the reinforcement, and then everything else strive for attack. When you build your weapon, use 2 attack pots and 2 affinity pots. As you were able to see, since I was burning just too many of them, I ended up not having any more attacks. So I had to make a 2 affinity and a 1 attack. But this should be the other way around. When you make this weapon, it should be 2 attacks, 1 affinity, and for the reinforcement boost, you should have 1 sharpness boost, and then as much attack as you can stack up. Decorations for the weapon. The focus is going to be a must if you can manage to slot a slugger right in here, since this is a weapon that deals lots of knockout damage. That's something that you're going to want to have. On the Guardian Jewel, that is going to give you offensive guard, I should very much like a slugger in here, but I don't have a brilliant jewel. Remember that you don't need the brilliant jewels. Just the focus level 3, the Guardian level 3, and then the critical boost level 3. It's going to be more than enough. But if you manage to get a KO jewel and a KO jewel on your focus and your Guardian, that is going to be amazing. As for the level 1 jewels that we want to have, prioritize the quick sheath, because this is a weapon that is not that movable, and your means of defenses are going to be like a triforce in between the several types of parries and counters and offsets that you have. If you want to, I can make a weapon guide so that you can see how I like to use the weapon. But as a general rule of thumb, you want to be blocking and then you want to be using your offsets. But if you feel that you need to sheath your weapon to dodge, you're going to need to use the quick sheath. On the other hand, if you're not sheathing your weapon that much, then you can use a divine protection in here. As for the physique, my advice is that it's going to be a must. It's going to be mandatory for this build to work as it is working right now. I'm going to show you in a little while in the training room what do I mean by this. But physique, to get constitution so that your blocks do not cost that much stamina. One tenderizer jewel so that we can make up for the weakness exploit that we are lacking in here. And then for the talisman, we're going to be using the challenger charm, which is going to, at the end of the day, give us 5 points into agitator. That is going to give us more damage and more affinity. Now, I saved this thing for the end because these guys right here are a synergy, the mighty jewels. In here, our maximum might is working as critical draw if critical draw was a useful skill. So let me elaborate on that. So in here, the opposite side of that, we want to recuperate our stamina by the time that we actually land a TCS, a true charge slash. That takes quite a bit of time, and by the time that we actually land a hit, our maximum might should be active so that we can start having those critical hits on the actual hit that it matters. And it is going to be active on many other several hits, but that's what we want to maximize the affinity and the damage with that thing. So for example, let's imagine for a reason that we actually spent a whole bunch of stamina right in there, and then we use a focus strike. The focus strike is going to be giving us our stamina back in there. You will see that our maximum might was actually active by the time that we actually landed the hit that we needed to have the affinity for, meaning that more often than not we're going to have very, very, very high affinity every time that we do a true charge slash. Similar to that, one of the most damaging attacks that we want to have maximum might for maximum affinity for is going to be our offset attack. So let's imagine in here that I'm fighting, that I'm using a whole bunch of stamina, and then I also want to prepare an offset attack. By the time that the offset attack is ready, I am going to have my maximum might in there, and my damage is going to be maximized because my affinity is going to be active at that time. So the maximum possible affinity that we are going to have with the attacks that we're setting up, the stamina that we're using, basically we have the maximum affinity possible so that most of the times that we deal damage to the enemy, maximum might is going to be active because of the preparation that it's the amount of preparation that it takes for us to have that. Consequently, you can also use dash juices or stamina stuff so that you can recuperate your stamina that much more, but we want to have the physique so that our blocks or dodges do not cost that much, so that whenever we're doing TCS or whenever we're doing offset attacks, our maximum might should be active. And that is pretty much everything for this build. Like I mentioned, it is not going to be as amazing as different other things that we have out there, like the Instaclave or the Vow or the dual blades or even the sword and shield. The sword and shield is just like a monster right now because of how much consecutive damage you can deal. This is going to struggle to keep up with the timing for killing stuff, but I'm just going to show you a little hunt in here so you can enjoy and see the potential of the weapon. If you like the content, like and never super appreciated, no, I'll tell you that you're a gorgeous, beautiful person. You're indeed a gorgeous, beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join Discord, have a beautiful day, goodbye.